you at your best. You at your ultimate. Eric Stuart at his finest.
Wow. Thank you. I mean, right now, I didn't think you could. I didn't think you would notice.
Well, it's your own fault because you were born that way. The rest of us, we struggle. You make it look easy.
Oh, you're so kind. You're so kind, Dan. I appreciate that. Yeah. Wow. Okay. Yeah. At your best. That's an interesting concept.
Right. Yeah. So other words used to describe this state is like deification.
Oh.
But apotheosis is not something that happens to your bones when you get older. It's attaining this ultimate state in the hero's journey. And there's lots of other philosophy and stuff that you can layer onto that. But to put it in terms that people can understand in the sense of their own lives, it's when you have that peak moment. Whatever it is that you're doing, you don't have to have careers like you and I do. I mean, you could generally say that we've had some success pursuing some creative things. Mm-hmm. But it can apply, if your goal is to be a great parent, it can apply to that, or a physical therapist, or just when you feel like you really attained this great combination of all of your aspirations and all of your capacities coming together at once and being able to really fulfill that in a way that you never have before.
So being your best you, but not necessarily gauging that on monetary or
no,
fame.
No.
Right.
I mean, for some people that may be what that is.
Sure.
But for other people, and I think generally if we look at stories and mythology, there's this really, really old movie that I think you can still find somewhere called The Matrix.
Ooh.
Yeah, and at the end of it, Neo, the main character, achieves this state. They made two other movies in that same. They didn't really have to. Not that I dislike the two other movies entirely. I don't think they're as good as the first one, but they really made the point in the first one.
Yes, I agree.
So he attains this in the context of that story. This almost godlike state.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's what we're referring to when we take a look at apotheosis in the lens of our own lives.
Wow. I will say, in addition to all of that, I love chatting with you because you introduced me to words that not only have I never heard before, but I still struggle to figure out how to spell. So if that's what we're going to talk about today, I'll look it up.
Right.
And let's do that today. That sounds good.
Right. But now, because of this, you're going to have an apotheosis moment the next time you play Scrabble.
Wow. Full circle. Okay, great.
There you go.
Welcome to the Heart of the Cards, a conversation about creativity, inspiration, and dealing with what we're dealt.
Hey, this is Dan Green.
And Eric Stuart.
And we are so happy that you are joining us today in our episode 13.
Wow.
Of the Heart of the Cards. And we're talking about apotheosis, getting back to the hero's journey. We've been away from that subject matter for a number of episodes by now. And this is so much fun.
Yeah.
This is so, inspiring and empowering. And I've recently talked about how loath I am to compliment myself or so forth. But I promise I will spill some beans on moments where I felt truly awesome.
Yes. Well, we balance each other out. I have the ego. I brag about myself, and you're the nice guy that should be bragging about himself.
Or do I just pretend like I'm the nice guy?
You are an actor, and a great one at that. Yes. Well, this sounds like a really interesting concept for today's
it's
podcast.
Provocative.
Yeah, I like it.
You went first last time, which I'm happy to have you go first again.
No. Yeah. I would like you to go first so I can really think about this one. Yeah,
I'm sure.
Yeah. So what do you got?
Okay, so this might be really unconventional for me to do, but I'm going to talk about having this kind of experience with performing a role. It was a voiceover thing, but it's something that nobody has ever seen.
Ooh, okay.
So this was happening shortly after I started doing Yu-Gi-Oh! And prior to that, I had started doing Pokemon before Yu-Gi-Oh! and Pokemon stuff before doing Yu-Gi-Oh! But there was this other show that was a prelay show, not a dub, and it was based on the Odyssey. And I auditioned for Odysseus and got cast. Now, For those of you who don't know who that is, Odysseus is probably one of the oldest heroes known to civilized culture. The take that they had on it was not to make it like stuffy and classical. It was much more modernized, and the acting style was very conventional, and it was somewhat more comedic based and all of that sort of a thing. You know, like a friendly Disney movie often is. So that was their concept, taking another classical story and making it accessible in a certain way to modern audiences. So when auditioning for it, they were saying, we want you to be this hero, but we're thinking of this hero in terms of if Michael J. Fox portrayed him. Now, I grew up watching Michael J. Fox, and I greatly respect him, and I'm not an exact match for a Michael J. Fox sound, and also in terms of what people typically ask me to do in acting, but I ended up getting cast anyway. So there's like 26 episodes, or maybe it was 24, but it was a full-on season, and other people in the cast were really good, and so I which makes you feel awesome as an actor. You're like, this is a great team.
Mm-hmm.
And another old story is when there's an actor who's really good in a scene, it makes all the other actors compete. They want to be as good. They don't want to be shown up, right?
True.
Or at least, you know. So I felt like I had a good team to live up to, good material to live up to, and I was feeling like I was getting the sense of what it was to come into a booth and have a really good session, thanks to 4Kids and other stuff that I had been doing in other anime and some other recording as well. But I would say that in my growth as a VO professional, I had gotten past the hurdle where you're still getting used to the environment. I was used to acting in different environments, and of course, voiceover is its own thing. So I had become comfortable with that, and I think that contributed to my ability to be better in the actual performance.
Mm-hmm.
But even so, in the first number of episodes, I didn't feel like I was really hitting it. And part of that was because they said, Dan, you suck. But another part of that was because
I wasn't there. I wasn't directing. What are you talking about?
So, but the other part of it was you can just feel it as a performer.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there was still some sort of imbalance between what was on the page and what was in their heads and what was actually going to work. And they would say things like less heroic, and then I do it less heroic. And then they say like, well, it's not heroic enough. And as an actor, that's when you want to say, make up your mind.
Mm-hmm.
But those episodes were considered like, you know, we recorded them and we got to a place where people felt like it was good or good enough. And we moved on. Well, less than halfway through, thank goodness, I came in one day, and I can't attribute it to something that I had prepped beforehand or anything like that. But I was just, as many people can understand this term, I was just on. I was just in the zone or dialed in. These are other phrases that speak to this feeling of apotheosis,
Mm-hmm.
where it's all just there for you. And instead of doing multiple takes where they're quibbling over interpretation, and I'm quibbling myself too. I certainly had generous directors, and it was a very supportive environment. But we all just want to get it right. So on that day, it was take one. Literally, they're saying knocking it out of the park. And you do coverage, you do more than one take because you need that. But I knew that I had an understanding that was really working for this character and what was in the script and how it was being received by the first audience you have are your directors and producers and engineers. And they were gobbling it up. So as somebody in their early 30s, not brand new, but somewhat new to a new form of acting and a new form of work, that was a really affirming experience. And it was also a job that I was more invested in doing well than maybe some other work that I had done.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought at that time, whatever may happen with Yu-Gi-Oh! And Yu-Gi-Oh! Hadn't become like a hit yet. It had just, kind of started. And I thought, whatever may happen with that, this is the series that I want to be known for. This is
Right.
where I'm really going to make my mark. And that was, in my experience, one of those times I can look back on and say, yes, that is a place I want to work from. That is a place I want to attain more often than not every time I do something. It's, you're always playing different characters.
Right.
The character itself doesn't matter. It's the way you're relating to the work that matters.
Right.
So,
and this was a prelay show as opposed to ADR dubbing. So you basically just had the script. This is for the listeners to sort of picture. Yeah. You just had the script in front of you without a visual reference, maybe a drawing of what the character looked like. But everything else was in your head and in the director's head, which might also attribute to the fact that it took them a little bit of time to be able to describe what was in their head so that it seeped into your
understand
head.
What they were going for.
Yeah.
Right. That's true. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. And also every team member has a creative learning curve.
Yes.
It could also be that the scripts got better.
That's true too. That's true too. Well, so when you prep for something like that role, because it's also, as you said, it's based on an older story that those of us who have read those tales would understand, and then trying to modernize that. What are some of the things that you would just do in general? Like, are you going back to the original material to sort of just get a general sense of what the true story is, and then watching Family Ties? Like, what is the
na.
I only ask for this specific thing because we've seen the modernization of show. Romeo and Juliet has been told in so many different forms,
and will be again.
Exactly. I think it's interesting because that would not be an actor that I would think of in this heroic role. And then again, that's probably why it made sense to do it that way. That's kind of a smart change.
Well, that's what they thought was cool about it.
Yes.
And about their spin on it. And I think that's a great example of something sounding good in conversation, but not actually really working. Because basically the shift that I made, if I were to simplify it, is I was trying to serve this idea of Michael J. Fox, but that's not really Odysseus.
No.
And what I dialed in, and I attribute some of this to Yami Yugi more than Yugi, is I dialed in a little bit more of that hero feel. And then they were like, oh, yeah, that's nice.
Right.
And it wasn't exactly what I was doing for Yami. No, it was younger. And if you want to really simplify it, you could say it was somewhere in between the two. But it wasn't really exactly either. It wasn't exact. It was something else.
Right.
And also, the thing about Odysseus is he's more of a smart-ass trickster than this blunt force, He's not like, I'm going to smack you down and I am mighty and therefore you will suffer. Mm-hmm. He's not vicious like Wolverine. He's like, can I smart my way out of this? And he has the guts to take on people way bigger than him. And he usually finds a way through.
If you're able to contribute as little as $1 a month, consider going to our Patreon page. Visit adromadaproductions.com and see what's in store. If this is content you enjoy, please like, subscribe, and share on YouTube.
Well, maybe that's where they got the cleverness of a character like Alex.
Right.
Yeah, I could see that. It just as a side note, it reminds me of all of the silly auditions that we get where they use celebrity references. I got one the other day, and I'm just going to use these celebrities as an example of what I'm talking about. It's like we're looking for, a very warm-sounding guy. He's knowledgeable. He's also kind of funny. Celebrity references are voice-wise, anywhere from Whoopi Goldberg to Danny DeVito to, and I'm looking, I'm thinking, are we talking because it's box office draw that these names are on this list? Because I don't think these two actors would potentially be auditioning for the same type of character.
Oh, for sure.
I just think that stuff is so funny.
Yeah, I have a similar example with there was this character they wanted to be like big and lower pitched and and really warm sounding. And one of the examples they gave was Forrest Whitaker. Now, I love Forrest Whitaker's work.
Right.
And he's a larger guy. He doesn't have a deep voice.
No. And that's what's amazing
Neither
about
does Sam
our
Jackson.
business.
Neither does Sam Jackson.
No.
But people think that because Sam Jackson can do intimidating, that he must have a really low voice. I
Right.
mean, he has depth to his voice, but you wouldn't.
Yeah, and that's where you want to
voice you've ever
tell.
heard.
That's when you want to tell the voice over casting people, stop giving us on-camera references. Like, close your eyes and then tell me if that's the
Right.
voice. That
Really listen, because we're going to listen, and then we're going to do that, and then you're
Yeah.
going to say it's wrong.
Oh yeah. I think there was one I just got that said, blah 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 blah, open to African American voices. Here's some celebrity references, and all 5 of the male voices that they listed were white actors.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I'm like, you're
That is-
open to it, but you're not going to give me an example of which one of the African American actors you're open to. Yeah. Welcome to Voiceover 101. Well, that's a really cool story, and what a cool moment too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I felt really good about myself that day.
Yeah. No, and as actors and performers, that's not always something that happens, and because there's so much self-doubt and self-critique, it doesn't even matter what anyone else thinks. It's we get.
Well, and I use this phrase as good or as good as you can get.
Yes.
And I think a lot of us live with the as good as you can get.
Sure. No, that's
under
cool.
the circumstances. Yeah.
That's very cool. So all right. So I'm going to think of one. As you were telling your story, I was trying to both listen to your story and also think, well, what am I going to say in response to that? Because I do like the fact that you pointed out that this doesn't necessarily have to be about the performance side, but I think knowing who I am, so much of those moments and that those goals are based upon being an entertainer, being a performer, being a creative person. My first example of this would be, so for many, many years playing in the New York City clubs and trying to figure out, what kind of music I was going to be playing, what is the image, what's the vibe, all of these things, and listening to advice from people who had been there before, from different managers who all wanted to take me under their wing, when I was 15, 16 years old, and try to shape what I was doing. And sometimes I'd follow along with that and go, I don't know if this is really the style of music I want to be doing or the way I was singing, comments about, hey, you sound too much like this and this, that you try to sound like this kind of an artist. And because I was pretty talented as a voice actor, and as a obviously before I made a living doing it, but being a comedic kid, I could do a lot of characters. I could imitate a lot of different singers, pop singers, rock singers. And so if someone said, we wanted you to sound like so-and-so, I'd be like, I could sing it in that style. But this wasn't me finding me. This was me listening to people who thought they knew better. And so much of that was a learning experience from looking back on some of the promo pictures that I took when I was at that age, and then listening to some of the cassette demos. That's right, cassette demos that I had.
That's that cassette thing we talked about in the previous episode. Yes,
that's how we say it, yes. Listening to those songs, and they're good songs, but just the production on them, and obviously very 80s, but also the style of the way I was singing and trying to find my quote unquote voice. It took
quite literally.
Yeah. It took a little time to get through that mess. I was excited because people were paying attention to what I was doing, and I definitely had. There was an energy around like, this kid's good, and he's, we love his songwriting. He's got a cool look, all of this stuff. But I wasn't really comfortable with exactly where I was headed with that, and I sort of rebelled against it. In the next chapter of playing music, I decided to go against all of that and grab an acoustic guitar, which I was a guitar player, but I was playing electric and I was using synthesizers and drum machines and cool production because that's the kind of music I was also listening to at the time. But I was also a rocker kid. I liked my AC/DC and my Led Zeppelin and stuff like that. So the next phase was, I'm going to strip it down. I'm going to go back to just like the basics of the singer-songwriters that I also love, like the Cat Stevens and the Jim Croces and the James Taylors. And it's like the core of the song. Like instead of the production side, the whipped cream on the horse beep stuff, So I started to do like an acoustic trio show. It was like me and two other guitar players, and we all sang, and one of us played a 12-string, and there was like 3-part harmony, and it was much more folky, and it was really it was a great departure from the first incarnation of what I was doing, and started to play live a lot more than just doing studio work. And this is in my 20s now, and so that.
Did you also like Bruce Cockburn?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you looked at my playlist now, it's still pretty much the stuff I was listening to. I still have the LPs and the cassettes of all that stuff growing up. My taste in music is a big spectrum of stuff, and I think that's why I'm constantly looking to either write, record, play, because I'm constantly, you know what, I'm feeling like I want to do a rock song. Nah, I'm feeling like I want to do a techie song. I'll listen to Enya and then also listen to AC/DC. Like that's,
sure,
that's what I do, right?
I get it, yeah.
To me, there's really only two kinds of music. There's good and then there's bad.
Whereas I will listen to Peter Gabriel and then I will listen to side B of Peter Gabriel.
Well, yeah,
just kidding.
Right. Yes, and a little.
No, I get it. I have a wide range.
You'll throw in a little K-push, right? Right.
Maybe do some Sting.
Yeah.
But it's got to be British.
Yes.
Just kidding.
Right.
No, I have a wide range too.
Yes. So going to the more acoustic live performance was something that was also an education. Things that go wrong in a live performance, sound people being either good, bad, not showing up, having to do sound yourself, all of these things. It was my education. It was my school. And I remember going from playing these smaller clubs to 30 to 40 people, mostly my friends, and playing regularly. Like we were doing, maybe 3 or 4 shows, maybe more than that, a month, which is a big deal in New York because people don't always want to go out and see music. So to get them to keep coming back and see, you had to keep changing up the songs. And we did a lot of, only original material. We did a lot of material. Actually, I take that back. We did 2 covers. We did Smokey Robinson's "Tears of a Clown" in the style of the English Beat, and we also closed with "Burning Love" by Elvis because we had to. Okay. Fight me. Anyway, so but otherwise it was all original stuff that I had written, and so going from playing all of those little clubs and really getting an education, my managers said to me, "Hey," and now my managers, I think, these 2 guys were 5 years younger than I was. So it's pretty funny to think that we were, a serious business. It's like, we're all a bunch of kids, basically. But they told me that there was an opportunity to open for the band Chicago. Actually, it was Chicago and Hall & Oates. They needed a local acoustic opening act.
Big deal. That's a big deal.
And that's kind of what, for those of you who have gone to concerts, sometimes you'll get the local talent will be the opening act. Sometimes we call them BLT for bad local talent, but hopefully no one will call me that when I was doing these shows. But that's how it works, is that they want to get somebody that's, from the area that might draw a couple of people, but it's not like they're depending on that person to really fill the seats. They've already got big headliners, but, let's warm things up. Either it's a comedian or it's, an acoustic act or something like that. And so they said they want to book you for 2 shows opening for Hall & Oates in Chicago. And now I had been playing to 30 to 40 people, and this was going to be 10,000 to 15,000 people a night for 2 shows. And they were local. It was a big venue in New Jersey, which at that time was called the PNC Bank Arts Center. I don't know what bank owns it now, or some foreign entity. And then Jones Beach, which is, of course, on Long Island, which is a very famous music venue right on the water. It's beautiful. So I looked at this situation and I said, okay, so I took one of my guitar players with me, and the two of us were going to do a duo kind of thing, and sing some harmonies and whatever. I still was not at that moment where I felt like I could walk out there completely by myself. I hadn't really been playing any solo acoustic shows. It had always still been in some sort of band format, even though a trio is not necessarily a full band vibe. It's still, I had other people. I had backup. I had someone who I could lean on musically during that performance, and also just help deal with any of the nervousness, the any stage fright or whatever might get in the way. And I remember walking out that night and peeking through the backstage curtains. And when I say backstage, this is an amphitheater. We played the Jersey one first, and it's a covered shed, and then the rest of the audience is sitting in the grass. So you look out, and it looks like a gigantic, almost like a baseball stadium. It's just filled with people. And I remember looking out there and thinking, wow, that's a lot of people, even this early for the show, for my set. And I think we got a 35-minute set or whatever. And they had written some articles promoting my appearance in the local papers, because it's not always easy to get the headliners to sit down and do an interview with those local papers. But we made it very easy for them to talk to a local boy who would talk about, yes, I'm so excited about doing this show. So there was a little bit of publicity that went around at my performance, which was very nice and very flattering. But I remember walking out there when they introduced me and thinking, okay, so this is really the test. You have been playing these smaller clubs, which I sometimes feel is harder than playing anything bigger than that now, looking back. But I had never played to an audience that large, crowd that big. And I only play original music. So either they're going to like me or they're not going to like me. And if this doesn't go over that well, maybe this is the message of you shouldn't really be doing this. Go back to just doing what you were doing before. And of course, this is going through my mind with the excitement of the performance. And we get out there and we play our first song. And at the end of the first song, as I hit the last chord, there's a pause of silence. And I'm thinking, they hate it. And then about a second later, there's this roar of applause and people cheering. And I realized it's because of the distance I was from the audience, how long it took the sound to get to me. So for that one brief moment, I thought, they hate us. They absolutely hate what I'm doing. And I'm just going to put the guitar down and get back into my, car and drive back home to Brooklyn. But no, they liked it and they cheered for it. And so we played the rest of the set and it went really well. And afterwards, I got off stage and, we're celebrating in our dressing room because we're so happy that, it went as well as it did. And at that moment, I thought, okay, so I have been doing this enough and learning enough in the trenches that when presented with this big show, I could handle it. And once I got past that first song of, is this going to work? Is this really what I should be doing? And getting that affirmation and getting that feedback in that live moment, I felt like I was at the top of my game. I felt like, okay, so the shift from all of the pop, techie, synthy stuff and full production to the stripped down stuff of you and your guitar really made sense to me at that moment. It really said to me, you know what? It's about the song. It's not always about the production, and it's not always about the way the artist is looking and how much I'm dancing around on stage. People still connect to that song. And if the material was there, then the other stuff is just icing on the cake. Yeah, do I consider myself a decent singer? Yeah, in my style, I'm a decent singer. Do I have good stage presence? I think in the style of what I do, yeah, it's me. I'm I'm an exaggerated version of myself, but it's still me. So I felt like, okay, this made a lot of sense. And also this gave me that moment of, okay, you're ready to do this anywhere, anytime, with anyone. That confidence happened at that moment, which in our topic today, that really gave me that I am at the top of my game. I'm at that pinnacle of I'm unstoppable now. I can do this.
Something I find really interesting in the way that you share that story was that before you approached the stage, you gave yourself this ultimate decision. Either I fail or go on.
Yeah.
Nobody else was doing that to you.
No.
And I understand why you would have that mindset for sure. It's fitting that that was what was going through your head in this discussion of mythic journeys and so forth, because you essentially slayed your own dragon in that moment. This question of am I worthy of this?
That's a great metaphor with that. Yeah, I don't think that I would have quit if it went poorly. I think I would have learned from it, but I also looked at the other side of it as, okay, so all of these people that we all travel in the same circles. You remember, the New York music scene, we all knew each other. I would have friends say to me, I don't know how you could have played in front of that many people or this and that, or how did you in that record company meeting play in front of the whole A&R department? And I would say, you know what? It's not about necessarily that the talent that's involved. It's you've got to be able to say, I'm going to do this and see what happens, because I could try to be on the other side of the glass and try to pick apart what I'm doing before I even walk in that room. But sometimes you just have to say, I do my own thing very well. I'm just going to do my own thing and not try to guess or second guess what people are looking for. And I think that's what I was doing with this moment before walking on stage was, okay, so you talk a big game, you keep saying, I want to do this for a living. Now here's an opportunity. So the door's open.
Right.
Your foot's in that door. Are you going to continue to go through it, or are you going to be crippled by the pressure of this and say, yeah, well, I had my opportunity and the opportunity told me right there, maybe this isn't for you. So I did analyze that, but I also know myself pretty well, and there are very few things that I have tried to accomplish in my life that I haven't fought for and I haven't been knocked down and then got back up again on all levels.
Right.
On all levels.
Right.
You don't want to tell me I can't do something.
Well, that's some good tenacity there. That's great.
Yeah.
So another thing I wanted to run past you, another thing that I was imagining as you were sharing your story was it was such high pressure moment to deliver. And of course you had your own questions in your mind about how well or not well that moment was going to be realized. But you had how many experiences performing before then?
Oh, I don't know. I mean,
right, exactly.
Yeah.
Too many, right,
Too many,
to count. Right?
Yes.
And how many years? That you might be easier to count.
I think the live performance stuff was probably 3 years, 4 years of that, sort of knocking it around. I first started playing music live probably when I was 15 or 16, but not in the same sort of format of booking clubs in New York City. Right. So yeah, probably about 3 or 4 years before that big show.
Right. And with the story that I shared, that wasn't my first rodeo. Right?
Right.
It was there were things that were unique to that circumstance. But the essence of what we were both doing was something that was familiar to us because we had already started paying attention to that part of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
We had already, to bring it back to the hero's journey, we had already walked a lot of that path.
Yes.
And I think it stands to reason that those apotheosis moments really can't be achieved any other way. You really can't shortcut something like that. You can have a good day You can, get lucky here and there, right? But those are examples where I think there's a combination, a confluence of your skill, which is something that you learn, your talent, which is something that you have but also learn to monopolize, and allowing the moment to elevate you, embracing that. Maybe one of the best things that happened for you was asking yourself that question, am I going to make this moment happen?
Yeah.
That's not necessarily a question of doubt. That can be an enticing question, not a defeating one.
Yeah, and also based on what you said just right before this so it's hard to gauge what happiness is or reaching that moment if you don't know the whole spectrum of good, bad, what are you measuring it against, right? The fact that we had been through some of these experiences prior to this moment means that we understood, oh, this is a much better place or more clarity for myself because I know what the opposite is or what's lower down on the spectrum of that of this gauge that I'm using. You would never know if you were at the top of your game if you'd only played the game once.
Of course not.
Right?
Of course not.
Right? So, yeah.
And even if you played it really well that one time,
right,
you don't know that you can replicate that.
Yeah, and like, is that like, hey, you get out there and you play your first show or you get on stage and you do your first live play and you go I nailed it. And you're like, I guess I'm done. Like, I get, all right, I could just hang up my hat and move on to something else. Yeah. Well, no, I mean, and also, as much as I do appreciate the mythology of this example that we're using, my goal as not just as a creative, but as a person, to learn is always, I want tomorrow's performance or tomorrow's creative endeavor to not necessarily, I don't want to use the word be better than the previous day. It can be different, but I do want I want to grow as a creative person. So,
of course.
So to say that you've reached that moment, I feel like I'm always reaching for the next moment that is on that next higher level because I that's the motivation. I don't want to sit back and go, I'm done. Like, that was the best song I've ever written, and I can't top that. I mean, sometimes in history, we've seen situations. I remember seeing a bunch of interviews with a band like the Eagles talking about how the song Hotel California was so fantastic it broke up the band. like how do you top that, right, sort of thing? And of course they did do great music after that as well. But the concept of saying, well, I mean, what else can I do? That to me can really stop the progress. It could stop the motivation to continue to do what you're doing. So it's an interesting concept to say, all right, I've reached that pinnacle, but there needs to be another step higher than that too, and another step higher than that too, or different. Yeah. Maybe more like branches rather than if you can imagine just this tall pillar, but the branches reaching up in different direction.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people who are practitioners of a certain thing, and that could also include they're professionals of a certain thing, they develop a standard below which they will never be satisfied and aspire to that higher standard that you're talking about. And maybe that higher standard isn't necessarily measured in terms of, no, it really is objectively better in X, Y, or Z way. Maybe that higher standard is allowing for the exploration of other things, or challenging yourself to achieve on a different level and not just try to get a higher grade on a test that you've already passed.
Yes,
right.
So
yeah, and I mean, for myself, people who knew me way back when I was young knew that I didn't only want to be an actor. When I was in school, I yes, that was the focus, but at that time, I thought I was also going to make movies that I wrote and directed, and so I have these other creative ambitions that are also compelling to me that I know I'm not nearly as good at as other things that I have more experience with or more natural talent for, but it's such an enticing journey. And whether or not I reach a stage of apotheosis with anything, I mean, there's a lot of people out there that think my work sucks, and that's fine. That's fine. So who's to say I've ever achieved that moment? But I do know what it feels like to have a moment that's inspiringly satisfying because your ability, your competency seems to be effortless. And not only are you getting what it is that you're going after, but perhaps you're even getting so much more than you could have imagined.
Mm-hmm. So what would you tell a listener who is searching for how to get to that point? Like, what you have described, it's very self-aware as well. Like you became self-aware of, your own abilities and what you were accomplishing at that moment. And same with myself. It's like, what would you tell someone who's struggling with trying to find that moment where they do feel like they are at the top of their game? Or like, what are they looking for? Are they looking for outside affirmation? Are they looking for them from themselves? What would you tell them?
That's a great question. And first thing I would say is, don't go into voiceover. We have enough competition. The second thing I would say, kidding, the more the merrier.
That's right. Yeah. I tell people, you want to get into voiceovers? Oh, no, I'll help you get into it. It's great. I say, because you've got to be as good as me. And right now, I'm not scared.
My old joke, I've been teaching for 15 years, and my old joke is, and I teach them wrong, so I don't have competition. Yeah.
Ooh, I like that. I'm going to have to steal that, too.
It's very cynical. It's very Steve Martin of me. Anyway, but I guess I would say just on the spot, because I don't have a little acorn to pass along. But I guess on the spot, I would say, never expect yourself to be awesome to begin with, but never be satisfied with something you know sucks, and you build from there. I've said this before in one of our earliest podcasts. Always be on your side.
Mm-hmm. I think that's so important.
That doesn't mean love everything you do, but you don't get anywhere beating yourself up.
Yeah.
And my kids are at an age where they're learning new skills, musical skills, artistic, visual art skills, and I have to remind them that not being good doesn't mean that you're bad. It means that you just have more to learn.
Yeah. Well, see, you didn't have anything prepared, but those were some great words to share. No,
I'm on my computer. I actually searched helpful phrases. No, kidding.
Well, but that is important. I think when people are listening to our stories and they see that, we have had a lot of the challenges that a lot of entertainers and actors and creative people have had, and how we deal with it. That's our unique story. Everyone has their own story, and what is success. And I just really think that if people are trying to get some insight to following their passion and their inspiration and their creativity from listening to the show, yes, that belief in yourself and without it being the ego thing, but more of the confidence thing. Really just, you will never know if you don't get up to bat. You will never know.
Exactly.
And it doesn't matter. It's not the gauge of like, I made X amount this year instead of X amount to say whether you're good at what you do. That monetary thing is not the goal in terms of my approach to this. You really should just enjoy what you do. And if you have a day job that's paying your bills, but you like to draw, and that's really who you are, that's in your soul, well, you can tell people, and it might even help to even say it out loud. So what are you? It's like, what do you do? It's like, well, I'm an artist. I do this. This is, my day job is I work at this thing, and this is what I do. But I'm an artist. Like, say it. There's something about owning that. And carrying that like a torch, like this is what I am, not what I do.
Right? I think that's a really, really helpful distinction for sure.
Cool.
Yeah.
Great.
And of course, material success and which includes, people responding positively and, complimenting you. Of course, those things feel great and are indications, right, of how your work is being received by others. But no, it's not the only standard, and that's certainly not something that you can use as fuel to begin with.
Right.
So that's not the gas that's in the tank.
Right.
Yeah. Well, my friend, let's draw this episode to a close.
Yeah.
A pleasure as always.
Good conversation today.
Absolutely. And I'm so heartened, no pun intended, with the heart of the cards, by the positive feedback we get from our listeners and followers. And we are definitely loving doing this, and we aim to bring you more.
Yes, thanks for listening, and it really means a lot to us. And the letters and all of the things that you can share with us really means a lot to us as well. So thank you.
Yeah, in an upcoming podcast, maybe we'll ask a question to focus some of the letters on, so that people can say something besides what we've been happy to share so far, and we'll also have more guests. I'm talking to a number of people people have been asking about, so that's ahead of us on our next few episodes of The Heart of the Cards, and we'll also continue on with a few more steps of the hero's journey, which we'll be completing pretty soon. After that, maybe we'll dive into some tarot cards, another sort of ancient and universally themed, these are the big things in life you have to think about, sort of thing. But most of all, thanks for being with us, and we look forward to the next time we can share a conversation about creativity, inspiration, and dealing with Eric Stuart. I mean, dealing with what you're dealt. That's what I meant to say.
Thanks for listening to The Heart of the Cards with Dan Green and Eric Stuart. We hope this conversation in some way spoke to you. Whatever your journey, we look forward to crossing paths again in the next episode. This is Veronica Taylor, and on behalf of Andromeda Productions, we wish you well.
Andromeda, always a sound choice.